What do you think of when you see this? It's a cat, right? But how do you know that this is a cat? Well, likely because when you were growing up, you were taught that the sound cat was tied to this image, or similar for whatever language you speak. Then when you learn how to spell, you realise that this word was also tied to the same thing. But when you input this image into a chatbot and ask, what is this image? How does it know what to do? If you've ever done one of those ranking your favourite trends on TikTok, then what you're likely doing is putting things further or closer together depending on how similar they are. Roast chicken? Is that vegetarian? Yes, okay. In that case, 6. So I have a very limited selection of very British biscuits right here, and I'm going to put them in order. Here I have my ranked biscuits from favourite to least favourite, although I feel pretty shameful putting a bourbon biscuit at the end. So we can see this as one dimension. So let's say my favourite is number 1 and my least favourite is number 6. 7, even the 7 biscuits here. And this of course is one dimension. It's a number line that we could call X, for example. Now, if I said to you that I wanted you to go get me my favourite biscuits from the local shop, you would automatically choose shortbread because that is what I've ranked as number 1. But if you got there and you found that they were out of stock, then your next best bet would be to choose the next item that I've ranked in this list. So you'd go and find some double chocolate chip cookies, for example. And it's this idea of looking at what's similar or next to a specific item in a dimensional space that is crucial in machine learning. So if we increase this to 2 dimensions, let's choose an example that is slightly less subjective. Fruit. If I now take 3 objects or words, so cat, banana, and dog, and you told me to move these items closer together based on their similarity, it would look like this in this 2-dimensional plane. Cat and dog are animals, so they'll be closer together, and banana would be a little bit away from these 2. We're visualizing this here by just moving items closer together whether they seem similar, but it turns out that we can bring this idea into the realm of mathematics. So the horizontal edge of our corkboard here would be denoted by the x-axis, and the vertical edge is the y-axis. Then these words that we have here, or objects, are just numerical values. So here, cat is represented by the point 4, 3, because it's 4 places across in the x-axis and 3 places up in the y-axis. This right here is known as a vector. A vector is similar to an arrow from the origin to a point. Now, where all of these vectors lie is what is known as the vector space. So you can imagine different vectors in this space and perhaps some different words as well. So an apple, for example, might be closer to banana. And this 2-dimensional grid is a vector space because every point in it can be described using 2 numbers, an x and a y value. So cat, dog, car, banana, apple could all be represented as different vectors in the same space. Now this right here is what is known in machine learning as a vector embedding. So what we're essentially doing is taking a word and representing it numerically. Now this kind of makes sense because for a computer to understand our input, we have to convert it to machine readable format. Not only this, but language inherently contains a lot of information within it, requiring a considerable volume of data to represent even small snippets of text. Now that's why in actual embeddings, the vectors here are actually in higher dimensions, not just 2-dimensional as we can see on screen. But obviously for this video to help with visuals, I'll be considering 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions, but keep in mind that in actual examples, these will be much higher dimensions. But of course, sadly, we can't visualize these. So we've seen words represented as vectors, but what about sentences? Well, a sentence like "the dog ate the banana" would be placed closely in the vector space to the sentence "a banana was eaten by a canine." Better yet, it's not just confined to words, we can also use images as well. Images can indeed be represented as vectors. So you can imagine our dog or cat here represented as an actual image rather than the text itself. Now in images, each pixel can be assigned a specific value, and these values collectively form a vector representation of that image. But why just stop there? Videos, audio clips, and even more complex data structures can also be represented using vectors. How awesome is that? A quick recap. Vector embeddings allow us to convert things like these into numerical values so that computers can understand them. And the closer together these items are in the vector space, the similar they are in nature. Interestingly, this idea actually comes from a very beautiful observation in linguistics. In the 1950s, linguists were debating about what words actually mean. One group thought that meaning came from definitions, another thought that meaning came from usage. British linguist J.R. Firth famously wrote, "You shall know a word by the company it keeps." Take the word board, for example. If I say I skated on my board, you know that likely means I've just ridden a skateboard. Whee! Whee! But what if I say the board of judges scored the performance out of 10? The word board here is the exact same word between the two sentences, but it has totally different meanings behind them. And so words are really only as good as the context or usage surrounding them. Okay, I know what you're thinking. How do we actually do this? How do we even get these vectors in the first place? They don't just fall from the sky. Instead, we use what is known as an embedding model. So we input our objects, so a cat, an apple, a banana, into this embedding model, and it outputs them as vectors. There are a couple of different ways to do it. In the past, feature engineering was one method where a domain expert might take and quantify certain features of the said object or sentence, so colour, shape, etc., and capture that object's semantics. But unfortunately, that's not scalable because it's very time intensive. Nowadays, there are very specific embedding models that have been trained for this very purpose. So for text, there's examples like word to vec, glove, and bird. The best way that you can be learning machine learning is by actively solving problems. I always found that when I was learning to code and when I was getting into machine learning as well, that actually solving real world problems or projects is the best way that you can learn. So the natural next question is, where do you actually go to learn all of this in a structured way without piecing it together from random tutorials? Well, that's where DataCamp comes in, and I've partnered with them for this video as they offer great courses to actually build the mathematical intuition I've been talking about in this video. Not just to understand it conceptually, but to be able to code it as well. And what makes it work is that everything is interactive. You're not just watching a lecture and hoping it sticks. Every lesson, you're writing real Python code in your browser, getting instant feedback, and building skills step by step. For machine learning specifically, I'd recommend 2 tracks depending on where you're starting from. If you're newer to machine learning, then the Machine Learning Fundamentals in Python track is the right entry point. It covers the core ideas, supervised and unsupervised learning, plus the Python tooling you'll use to apply them. By the end, you'll actually train models, not just describe them. Now, if you're already feeling comfortable with the basics and you want to go deeper, then the Machine Learning Scientist with Python track goes much further. It goes into model tuning, deep learning, natural language processing, which is literally where vector embeddings live, and the kind of machine learning engineering you'll be doing in a real job. Both tracks come with hands-on projects, which means you can actually use them in a portfolio, and DataCamp certifications built around a timed exam plus a practical exam that you actually prove the skills you've built, which matters when you're applying for jobs. If you're interested in learning more about machine learning, then I've put the link to the resources in the pinned comment and the description, so you can go check out DataCamp for yourself. Now, the next question in all of this is, why is this useful? Let's say I've just finished watching Hidden Figures, which is one of my favourite films. Now, streaming platforms basically take a film and it can represent it as a vector using keywords such as, for this particular film, it could be mathematics, women in STEM, space, and it can use those values and use the characteristics of that film in a vector space to then show you what you might like if you've just watched this film. So if you notice on most streaming platforms, you'll have a suggested page, and you can see here that most of these are science related. We've got Gifted, which is actually mathematics. It's a woman in STEM mathematics film. So that is correct there on suggestions. Mission to the Sun, which is a documentary, I believe, by National Geographic. So this is an example of where vectors are used in real life. You can represent a film as a vector, and then when you want to suggest content to the person that's just watched that film, you can look nearby the vector space and see what might be similar to that movie. And then that's what you see here in your suggested page. But the same also goes for music as well. Have you ever wondered how music platforms know what you might like to listen to? The answer is vector embeddings. These platforms can represent songs, artists, and playlists as vectors, capturing patterns like genre, tempo, and what listeners with similar tastes tend to play. Then they recommend music that sits nearby in that vector space. I actually had a funny encounter with recommendation systems on my music streaming platform. I have this playlist called Mathematics Focus, and it basically contains almost like classical music that you'd find in some of my favourite maths films. I use this to listen to when I'm doing work, but then I also like to listen to other music that's not classical music that I like to listen to when I'm driving or going to the gym or doing things like that. And at the start of the year, I think the recommendations must have reset, so that then when I went to my Discover Weekly playlist, it was all classical music. So it's interesting really, these things affect your life without really knowing, and I think that is a perfect example of how vector embeddings and machine learning works in everyday life and how it can affect you. While we won't look at the in-depth reason behind how these embedding models work, because this video would end up way too long, but as a side note, if you want a video on that, let me know in the comments. But what I can show you is how, if you have two vectors, we can compute their similarity. Now, one way we can do this is by looking at what is known as the cosine of the angle between two vectors. This technique is called cosine similarity, and you might have already seen it in mathematics. So what we're doing is we're technically asking, are these two arrows, so vectors, pointing in the same direction? And the formula for this looks as follows. So let's take a specific example of two vectors that have the points x equals 3, y equals 4, and x equals 4, y equals 3. For this example, we're going to take two movies, Hidden Figures and Imitation Game. We know already that their vectors are x equals 3, y equals 4 for Hidden Figures, and x equals 4, y equals 3 for Imitation Game. So all we need to do now is compute the cosine similarity between these two. So firstly, we need to calculate the dot product. So that would be 3 times 4 plus 4 times 3 equals 12 plus 12, which equals 24. Next, we need the length of each vector, as we can see in the denominator for the expression that we're trying to calculate. So for Hidden Figures, this would just be the square root of 3 squared plus 4 squared, which equals the square root of 25, which equals 5. And the eagle-eyed amongst you will also know that this is the exact same expression for Imitation Game, because the x and y values are just swapped here. So we also end up with a length of 5 for Imitation Game as well. Now, plugging all this into our expression for the cosine similarity, we end up with this expression here, which equals 0.96. Now, cosine similarity is within the range -1 and 1, where values close to 1 are very similar and values close to -1 are very dissimilar. So here we can see that these two films are very similar indeed. Again, it's really worth highlighting that these vector embeddings are directions in some very high dimensional space, not just 2D or 3D. Of course, we can only visualize up to 3 dimensions, but it's still beautiful nonetheless. Vector embeddings also appear in large language models. Sentences are usually divided into smaller pieces, also known as tokens, and each piece is associated with a vector. Now again, there is some really elegant mathematics behind this, so if you'd like to see more on this topic, then let me know in the comments. But thank you so much for watching, and if you're interested in seeing the behind the scenes content of all the crazy stuff that I got up to in this video, then make sure to click join or head over to my Patreon to check it out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.